Hey everybody, welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Durling, and on this episode, it is part of the Sammy Hagar Deep Dive series to promote Red on Black, Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar. We're just about wrapped up with it, but I wanted to do an episode updating my Sammy Hagar vinyl because I haven't done one in about 8 years, and I've got more vinyl to talk about than I had last time around. So I'm going to get into the copies of Sammy's albums that I have on vinyl. Of his solo work, of course. Back to 1976, first one, 9 on a 10 scale with this really weird cover, almost as weird back cover. This is a U.S. edition on Capitol Records, and it is it's not a reissue, so it's an original press, and the record itself has got the old 70s style Capitol logo. Second album, 1977. Very cool cover, which if you go back and watch the video where Sarah and Lily talked about 70s album covers, this was one they both particularly liked. It is a Hypnosis cover, second album, self-titled, most often called the Red Album when people call it anything at all. And this is, let me see here, this is a Capitol reissue, so this would have come out probably sometime in the early 80s. And it's got a different label on it, too. If you see one that's green like this, it's a Capitol reissue. Also in 1977, third Sammy Hagar album and another Hypnosis cover. Musical chairs, kind of an odd one here. Doesn't even really look like Sammy. And just to prove that everybody in the 70s was kung fu fighting, check that out. Not sure if the lyric sleeve came with this, but it's also a reissue. And this one's actually a Canadian one. One of the best albums, and where I would point people to start with Sammy's 70s stuff, definitely 1978's All Night Long, his first live album. This one's a little beaten up. It's got a little bit of ring wear on it. And this is, I believe this is an original. It's a gatefold. So it's got some live shots, which is pretty cool. Not sure if there was an inner sleeve, but this is what the label looked like. So that was pretty typical Capitol for non-reissues in the late 70s and into the early 80s, the purple like that. That album was issued in the UK, of course, and it was called Loud and Clear, and they gave it a different cover. So this is a UK edition of that live album. Same album, except they added a live version of Space Station number 5 on the end. Which means if you're like me, you kind of got to get them both. There's the inner sleeve. Now, chances are a sleeve like this came with the US All Night Long, and I just didn't find one with it. And here's what the album looked like. Customized label, which is pretty cool. So there's no song titles written on there, but you turn it over, and it's got side 1 and side 2 all listed here. 1979. Still on Capitol at this point. For Street Machine. This is a US copy, and it's an original. It's not a reissue. Sammy and the band there. There's the sleeve. A little bit of credits, no lyrics. And by this time, I guess Sammy had done a little bit better, so he gets a personalized label. Kind of neat. Not often to find singles from the Capitol era, but I've got one. That's a UK single for This Planet's on Fire, and it's backed with Space Station number 5 from All Night Long or Loud and Clear. That's what it looks like there. And like a lot of the UK singles, it's got the small hole, but it looks like this is perforated so you can punch it out. I would never do that, but if you wanted to, I guess. Not often that you find his Capitol stuff, like, at all. It's even more rare if you find it in Canada, which is where I found this edition of Danger Zone. This is his last studio album for Capitol, 1980. This is a Canadian version. got the original sleeve. And we're back to the purple Capitol label. Let's see, 1981. First thing I want to show you, I didn't have this last time I did a vinyl episode for Sammy Hagar. This is a UK 12-inch single for the song Heavy Metal from the movie Heavy Metal, which is why it's got that artwork on there. And it's interesting because this is actually on Epic Records. So it's on CBS. And of course, people know the Heavy Metal soundtrack. It was on Elektra, so obviously that wasn't the case in the UK. But what I like about this is that it's got two songs on here that have still never appeared on CD. Don't Get Hooked and Satisfied. They're both good B-sides, both from the Standing Hampton era. And of course, this version of Heavy Metal is slightly different than the Standing Hampton version. Same song, different recording. So what does the record itself look like? Well, this is what a UK Epic would look like. So it's a little bit like the North American ones. It's just they used a darker blue in North America. Same shape of the logo. Pretty cool. Now, Satisfied, if you've seen my shows before, I've already had, because I've had this 45 for a long time. It's I'll Fall in Love Again. And Satisfied was the B-side of that. Great song. Has never been on, I don't even think it's ever been on a cassette, much less a CD. And that should be fixed. How? I don't know. I don't know who to talk to. If Rock Candy Records does a reissue of Standing Hampton, I hope those two songs are on it. And the movie version of Heavy Metal. 1981, it actually came out in early 82, but it's got an 81 date on it. Standing Hampton, of course. This is his first Geffen album, and this is a Canadian album. By now, it's got the maple leaf up there, and then this Warner sticker. With the original sleeve. This time, I believe for the first time, we've got lyrics. And in the early 80s, this is what the Geffen label looked like. Very much like the Warner Brothers ones, except for the label, the logo itself. 1982, Capitol Records attempts to cash in on the new success that Sammy was having on Geffen with Rematch, 10-song best of. This is a Canadian version on Capitol. I don't know what came with it for an original sleeve. This is obviously not the right sleeve because it's in an A&M sleeve, but it protects it, so I'm going to use it. And this is what the record itself looks like. We're still on the purple Capitol. Also in 1982, long since called it my favorite of Sammy's albums. Greylock box. This is a US version on Geffen. I don't know if there was a sleeve in this, a lyric sleeve, I'm not sure, but I do know that the vinyl came in its original sleeve, which is pretty cool. So that's what the record looks like, but this clear sleeve also has the Geffen logo on it on that side, and it just says Geffen Records over here. So this is the sleeve that's would have come in, which is pretty cool. I say that a lot, but I like it when you can tell that when you buy a used record, it came with the stuff that it was supposed to, or it originally did. More reissues from Capitol. I want to hear the full-length version of this concert, live 1980. This came out in 1983, and this is a Canadian version. No idea what it would have come with it for a sleeve. Mine's just in a clear sleeve, and by now Capitol was using what I call the rainbow, the colors all around like that. 1984, a few things to talk about here. Overlooked album, the HSAS Through the Fire, Hagar, Sean Aronson, Shreve. This is a Canadian version on Geffen Records. I don't know if there was an inner sleeve with lyrics or anything, but this is what the record looks like. I also have a 45 from this. Where is this from? Well, it looks to be American. So this is the 45 for Whiter Shade of Pale. Look on the back there. And this is the single itself. Also in 1984, of course, we've got the biggest Sammy Hagar solo album, VOA. This is a Canadian edition on Geffen. And got the original sleeve. And by now, the Geffen label, the labels themselves and the records were black with the silver logo. And I've got a single from that album. Little thing you may have heard called I Can't Drive 55. This is a US single. What was the B-side? Oh, same one on both sides. Oh, it's a promo single. Okay. So if you look, they've got the 55 done up like that. Then the next thing to come out solo. Love this song. Winner Takes It All from Over the Top. This is a US 45 of that. And the soundtrack was on Columbia, so there's the single. B-side of this is just the instrumental from Giorgio Moroder called The Fight, which is also on the Over the Top soundtrack. And then later in 87, Sammy puts out what was originally self-titled and what was later issued as I Never Said Goodbye. I don't think there's any vinyl issues with the Never Said Goodbye title. Now, I was lucky I kind of did this right because I could have messed this up. There was no text on this at all when it first came out, at all. There was a clear sticker with his name on it, and it says it includes the hit single Give to Live. And an even smaller print is the serial number, and on the back, song title, side 1, production credits and the year. That was on the cellophane, and I stuck it in a good spot because it's a little bit crooked, but it kind of looks like it was supposed to be there that way. And of course, down there in the corner, that is what that's what the cassette looked like. That's what the 8-track had on it for a cover, and that is what the CD long box had on it for a cover. So if you're confused as to why this looks different, you've probably never seen the vinyl before. And this, of course, came with a lyric sleeve, picture, and nothing out of the ordinary, just your typical Geffen label there. And I've got the aforementioned single from this album, Give to Live. This came from a department store in the US called Ames, which I used to shop at it in Maine all the time. There's the price tag, and this retailed for $1.77 at the time. So that's a US single sleeve for Give to Live. And the B-side was one of my favorite songs in that album, When the Hammer Falls. Just got a couple more things to talk about. 2019, Sammy Hagar and the Circle, Space Between. This is a US version on BMG. Pretty good album. A record store day thing that came out in 2019. I didn't get this at the time. I got it later. Santa's Going South for Christmas. This is a 12-inch single, and it's got a 2019 live version of Eagles Fly on the other side of it. And then finally, what the next edition of the Deep Dive is going to be about, so far the most recent Sammy Hagar album, Sammy Hagar and the Circle, and Crazy Times. There it is on vinyl. So that's my Sammy Hagar solo vinyl collection. I want to thank everybody that's purchased Red on Black, the Listener's Guide to Sammy Hagar, still available through Amazon. I'll have a link to it below. Don't forget to subscribe to Tim's Vinyl Confessions on YouTube if you haven't already. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps me out a lot. And yeah, we got more episodes planned, more books planned too. More about that as it becomes more apparent when things are going to start to happen. So I want to thank everybody so much for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'll see you later.